Welcome to Open Comments with myself, Ash,
and me, Oliver,
where we'll discuss things openly with our guests from a variety of backgrounds and from different walks of life. Through this podcast, we hope to give you an inside look into a variety of topics with an equal mix of humour and candour. In this series, we'll touch on some of the following topics: healthcare, HR, diversity, access to technology, and lots more. We hope you enjoy our show and look forward to bringing more topics into the fold. Let's get started.
Great. Today we have Miss Joanne Woytek. Joanne, welcome to the show. Miss Joanne Woytek is the Program Director for the NASA SEWP Program. Ms. Woytek manages the strategic direction, planning and day-to-day operations of SEWP, a premier government-wide acquisition contract, GWAC, providing federal agencies access to the latest in information and communication technology solutions. Ms. Woytek is a 40-plus year veteran at NASA. So, Joanne, welcome to the show, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start with just a brief summary of your career journey so far, how you got to where you are. I know we mentioned that you're 40 years plus at NASA. So how did you get to where you are today?
Right, it's hard to be brief with 40 years behind you. So as briefly as possible, I started at NASA while in college. I wanted to be an astronomer. That was my goal. I was a physics major. I got a call to take on what was called a co-op job. So I'd work half-time while still going to school from NASA. So excited to hear that. I still have the piece of paper where I wrote down what I was told, and it said I have no idea what they were talking about image processing and computers and programming. This was back in the 70s. Had no idea what that meant, but took the job anyway because I wanted to be at NASA, and ended up working for the first part of my career, the first 20 years or so, with scientists at Goddard Space Flight Center, which is the largest NASA facility. It's where currently the Webb telescope, for example, comes from, and we do a lot of the non-human science, the astronomy, and then also Earth sciences. So I work with meteorologists primarily, doing imaging, doing data solutions, doing high-end computing, becoming quite into the depth of programming and systems to support those scientists. And then NASA itself decided to have this program that would help our scientists, with the initial goal to help our scientists get computing capabilities faster than the normal government ways. And so I got hooked into that. Long story with that piece, but eventually became the program manager / director of this thing we call SEWP, which is Solutions for Enterprise-Wide Procurement. It's put together by NASA, but used by the entire government. And just because I wanted to try new things, I said, let me try managing this, thinking that would be easy. Managing is not as easy as one might think. After about doing this, being manager since '99, I think about 10 years ago, I finally figured out how to be a pretty good manager. But as you're talking about mentoring and learning, it's definitely been a learning experience to move from technical to manager to where I am now.
That's great, thank you. Now, next question, can you touch on the ways in which you strategize effectively within your current role?
Well, strategizing is something that is relatively new for me. That's one of the things I had to learn about. I just kind of did it all on my own. That was my career as a programmer. I just wrote programs and got things done. And then I became this manager of this huge program that became bigger and bigger. And I suddenly realized, I need to have some strategy to what I'm doing. And I will actually give a little plug to Open Group. And I'm on the board of the Open Group, and would hear about the strategic plans there, and thought maybe I should have one of those. And then, interestingly, as we're doing this podcast right now, today, I just started the next iteration process for mission and vision planning that's a lot of strategy within our program. Something that I also didn't like for a long time, but learned how to embrace that need to have a plan for what we're doing, and a mission and vision can help do that. So So just got that started today with one of my staff, hopefully leading the way on the next iteration.
So what's the most exciting part of your day? I know you said you may not be you weren't a massive fan of strategizing, but you've learned to find a way to make it work. So what's the most exciting part about what you do?
I think why I've enjoyed managing, which I think goes down to what makes it exciting and why I'm still doing it long past when I could have retired, is because I realized I love programming, and programming to me was a way to translate an idea into code that would make the computer do what I wanted to do. When I was faced with management, I realized that maybe the fun thing there, the thing that was exciting that I learned to embrace, is I have to take ideas and not figure out how to get a computer to be coded, but figure out how to actually make myself change and work with people to help them answer the problems that they're facing, and how to deal with all these issues that come up when what is initially a 15-person staff and is now a 130-person staff. How do I change myself? How do I change how I operate? And constantly kind of recoding, in a sense. I don't want to say I recode people, but I recode the environment in which we all work so that it can succeed. So it's always challenging, and I love challenges.
Well, that is quite a challenge, going from 15 to 130 plus
Yes.
people. Yeah.
It's been relatively rapidly. We've done that. That major growth has been just in the past 5 years.
How do you even start to try and strategize, that kind of growth? How do you manage that?
So, yeah, initially very badly, as any of my staff will tell you, who were with me back then, trying to figure out what that means to take a team and have it grow and change from a family environment. I was fortunate in having, I mentioned Open Group, which actually we mimic a lot of their size, and I have learned from them. I've actually learned a bit from my own my church that I was at back in. I remember going to some of the meetings there and thinking about how they were growing and trying to figure out what they were doing. So I look at examples of what others have done in terms of growth, and I'm not, I certainly did not have that experience to know how to do it on my own. I just knew that I liked solving problems. But then, what are the tools? Well, learning that there are others who are going through it and thinking about bringing in, one key part for me is bringing in experts in what they do, and having a good support and staff. Not trying to put it all on myself to become the, how do I grow this and make it work, but rather looking to others and saying, well, this person is good at this, and this person is good at that. Let me leverage what they bring to the table.
That's great. And before we dive into what a typical working day looks like for you, I've just had a little light bulb moment. In terms of going back to problem solving, is there a particular, roadmap as such that you follow when you solve problems, or is it just that when a problem arises, you have steps to follow, or is it just you deal with them when they arise, if that makes sense?
So, for better or worse, and my staff can tell you which way they feel, given which day it is. My technique is I'm a visionary. I tend to have ideas, and I throw them out there, and then I have to figure out how to work from that. So when a problem arises, I'm actually very good at coming up with an initial idea, initial concept, and it does mean that this is why I have to rely on others to help me, because I'm not an organized person who can take those ideas and say, these are the steps. But I'm very good at recognizing what the core of a problem is, and what my first thoughts of how that might be solved, bringing that to the table. And what I had to learn, this is why I was not very good at the beginning, was I would bring it to the table and say, now do this. And now I've learned, I bring it to the table and say, how can we do this, and how can it change, so that I can get feedback and get put people more involved than trying to be dictatorial about my ideas. But it is very much run through the visions that I have. Used to call them shower moments or walking moments when I'd be walking along saying, oh, that's how I'm going to fix this.
Nice. And going on to the next question of what a typical working day looks like for you, I'd just like to say, just quickly, but it's been great, talking to you so far. I feel like your day probably encompasses so many different things. And as you've been touching on problem solving, what I like about that is not only the process, but as you say, it's like things come at different moments to you. So it's almost like it's an ever-growing process of how to deal with those problems. But as you say, bringing in your team into the fold as well. And that's such great advice as well. So thank you. That was just a bit of a caveat. But going on to what a typical working day looks like for you, would you like to take us through?
Well, a typical day involves meetings, of course, but mostly now, and it certainly has changed in part because of the pandemic and being virtual, although we are getting a bit back to the office. When I'm in the office, there's a lot of the day is spent on almost immediate, either planned meetings or immediacy of somebody coming into my office and saying, "Just can I talk to you for a minute?" And spending time kind of putting those all in their places. As one of the parts of my days that I've gotten better at is not having as many meetings, giving myself more time, delegating it more, so that so I can take the time to do some writings, or there's always presentations, podcasts, whatever I have to get ready for, and think about. And there's paperwork to be done. We're currently in the next version of our contract, so we're doing writing up an entire RFP, request for proposals. That's taking a lot of my time, working with contracting teams and technical teams to do that. It's very broken up, and especially during the day. So I have to be ready to take my time and break it up accordingly to what's happening, and hopefully keep a fairly good view of what the key areas that I have to address. Get a lot of emails, so I spend a lot of time shifting emails to the right place. That's one of my best organizing triumphs, was I learned how to really organize my emails into nice folders, so I can find anything any time and know what has to get worked on and what's still left out there without having to spend a lot of thought on that. So those are some of the key parts of my day.
So I think it's fair to say, just from us listening to you there, that you are you're very much a mentor within either your wider team and your organization itself. So on that note, how important is mentorship to you, and what role has it played in your career journey so far?
Well, my greatest mentor was when I first got to NASA back in '77. I was stuck in a room with a lady, and again, I didn't know anything about programming, and they said, "No, you're going to program," and she took me in. Wonderful person, Mary Desjardins. She passed away unfortunately last year, but she and I ended up being a team for many years. I learned so much from her about how to think logically and critically, and put it into ways that work for me. So it's always important to have somebody that helps lead you along. I think that is in terms of being a mentor to me, that was big. I'm not big on being mentored. I'm one of those independent people, but I did actually at one point, when I realized I needed some help with how to be a manager, to take advantage of a NASA program, and I did catch on to a lot of key factors about being a manager by using actually a coach, not a mentor. But I do see, at the same time, I see my job even more so now as I reach more the end of my career, is being a mentor to the new folks coming in, and we're really working on that and making sure that they know that I don't just assume that they know everything. I have to know that that they have to learn much as I had to learn. And I tell my other senior staff, we can't just assume the new folks are just going to come in and be where we're at today. They're going to be where we were at when we started. And sometimes that's a good starting point for being a mentor, is think about the fact that you once were just starting out, but you were just trying to deal with an issue. You were trying to learn. Put yourself in those shoes and don't expect them to be where you are already. If you do that, then you can help them along much better than, well, you should just know this sort of view.
There's a thing you mentioned earlier, it was before this question even, of when you started to become a mentor to other people, it went from, your directions went from do this to how can we do this? And I guess that's kind of been something you've learned over time, but I guess maybe that someone had an influence on you on your earlier stages of your career.
Right. And I think that, and then I would say the other big turning point for me was when I learned that, and this is actually through the coach, that I can't change other people. I can only change myself. And recognizing that was a big light bulb for me, because I always thought, well, I'm just going to make everybody else be like me. And then I realized, no, I have to figure out how to work. I have to figure out how to change so I can work with other people. And that was a really big step in my evolving as I think what is considered a pretty good manager now.
So you briefly touched on it earlier as well, of people that are just joining may not know what you know now, and it's a learning point, and there's something that you may have to teach people. So on that vein, is there any advice that you could either give to your younger self before starting in your role, or any graduates that are looking to get into your line of work?
Well, if in terms of getting into my line of work, if you're going to be I got two lines. So if you're going to the technical computing world, I think it's important to I probably in any case, even in management, if you're coming into it, be aware that you don't know everything. You may have come and taken your courses in college, and you may have this this strict way of this is how the world is, or but the fact is the world is much more complicated. And requires agility in if you're going to really succeed. So be prepared to learn. Be prepared to bring your ideas to the table also. And most important of all for me is ask questions. If I tell the staff all the time, I worry the most when I don't hear questions being asked. I don't worry if you ask a question, even if it's a real simple question. I worry if you don't ask that question. So really, I think that's probably my key point to anybody coming to any field. Ask the questions that you need to ask. Don't be afraid that you're showing that you don't know something. You're actually showing you know something if you're asking a valid question. You're showing that you know what you don't know. And that actually goes back to my mentor. We always talked about the worst people are the people who don't know they don't know something. You want your staff to know they don't know something, so they know they can learn. So they know they can be mentored and grow, and that brings so much more richness to them and to the job and to the and to the rest of the staff if they can be that way.
That's really great, thank you. I especially like the quote which you just said there: "Ask the questions that need to be asked." I feel like that will definitely stick with me, but that's great in terms of it's almost like a mantra as well, just listening to it back. And it's great to carry over in your everyday, so thank you. So to end things, we'd like to end this episode, we'd like to start with just a few quick fire questions, and the first being, what are you most looking forward to for the year ahead?
For the year ahead, well, I was kind of looking forward to a safari, but now that's going to be 2 years from now. So we talked earlier before this about one of the trips I'd like to take. For this year, in terms of work, as I mentioned, we are working on a new requirements for the next version. This is actually a really exciting time for us because whenever we do a new version of our program, it's an entire this is when my ideas come to full fruition, when I'm really putting them out there and trying to see how we can put them in. So it's an exciting year. seeing that come by this time next year, it should be fully out there and developed, and I think it will put our program into the next level of growth and functionality. So really excited by that.
Nice. And do you have any hobbies that you'd like to share?
Mostly golf, I guess, would be the closest to a hobby I have. I love to golf. It's a good exercise. Gets me out and about.
And third one, are there any quotes / mantras that you follow?
Well, the quote that everybody follows from me, because I tell them to, I forget when I first came out with it, but it's that I'm often happy, but never satisfied. So this is what my staff knows about me. Often I'm happy about things. I'm a happy person, but I'm never satisfied with where we're at. So I use that OH and S. Often happy, never satisfied.
So, if you could have dinner with any celebrity or influential figure, past or present, who would it be and why?
Wow. There's a lot to choose from. I don't know why it pops in, but Barack Obama sounds like to me like a fantastic person to sit down with and just talk to.
Is there a particular question that you might ask him?
I don't know if I would have a specific direct question. I just think his story is so fascinating. Mm-hmm. I would want to, if he'd be a great mentor, somebody who could tell me what are things that helped him get past all the obstacles that he had to in such a magnificent way, and being such an amazing leader. Very. Would probably, at the end of it, I would probably just stumble like I'm doing now. Not quite sure what to say to him. I once met somebody very famous at the time, and he was my favorite author, and I remember just going, as much as one thinks they're going to say something wonderful, I think I would just want to hear from him what has made his life so successful.
Yeah. Nice. So on that note, we'd like to say thank you so much for joining our show, and it's really been great not only learning about your colourful career, but also just the advice that you have for graduates going forward who are looking to go into a similar career as yourself, and just generally just getting to know you. I think it's been such an informative episode, and we really hope that our listeners have enjoyed this episode as much as we have. So for those that would like to keep up to date with you and what you do, where can they reach you? For example, LinkedIn, socials, website, etc.
Sure, I am on LinkedIn, Joanne Woytek, Woytek. I know I'm the only Joanne Woytek out there. There is another J Woytek because he got all the user IDs. But I'm the only Joanne Woytek out there. So there's that. I do have a blog, rhinostalk.blog. It's a personal blog. If you get me on LinkedIn, I post it there. Also on Facebook, I'm also Joanne Woytek, and can link from there to the blog, or you can probably do a Google search and find me. So that's one way. And then from a professional point of view, the website is www.sewp.nasa.gov. That's where the program sits that I manage.
That's great. Perfect. So thank you again for joining our show, and to all our listeners, we look forward to bringing more topics into the fold. And for now, it's goodbye until next time. Thank you.